Okay, welcome everybody to another Europlanet webinar. Thank you for taking the time out of your morning to join us for this session, which I think is especially pertinent given everything that's going on in the world right now. We're going to be talking about diversity with Iris van Zelst from University of Edinburgh.
Thank you all for being here. This is the surprisingly fun diversity talk you actually want to attend, or at least I can hope to make it fun. Basically, it's not going to be too different from what I showed at EPSC, but there are updated anecdotes in there, so stay tuned. And I kind of want to make clear via some fun personal stories why perhaps we should take diversity seriously and why we should still be, trying to make science a more welcoming and diverse place. Although usually in these kinds of talks, the people that attend these kinds of talks are already kind of aware of the problem. But, I'll share my stories nonetheless. And I also want to share some things that I have done or in my attempt to help with the EDI, equality, diversity, inclusion in science, planetary science, geoscience, and obviously also notify you about what kind of small things you can do. It doesn't have to be anything big. You can do a lot with even very tiny gestures. So, thank you very much for having me. So I'm Iris. I'm currently at the University of Edinburgh. I just moved here. I just started a new job, very exciting. And my current role is Patience Cowie Research Fellow. So I've upgraded from a postdoc to a research fellow. I don't know exactly what the difference is, but I think it sounds cooler, so I guess that's fine. The other cool thing about this job that I have is it is named after Patience Cowie, who was a scientist. This is her. And she was actually in Edinburgh. She was a professor in geodynamics and lithosphere tectonics, I think. And she also later moved to Bergen in Norway, where she was also a professor. And she very sadly died at quite a young age, in her 50s, in 2020. And in order to commemorate her and celebrate her massive contributions to science, the University of Edinburgh, specifically the School of Geosciences, decided to start a fellowship in her honor, in her name. And last year was the first time they advertised for this fellowship, and I was one of two people to get this fellowship. There's two of us, and it's pretty cool to be on a fellowship that is named after a woman that is trying to commemorate this. And this is part of the University of Edinburgh's growing initiative, let's say, to have these diversity fellowships, because technically, shock horror, this is a diversity fellowship. And I know that comes with biases. And so I'm going to tell you some stories. I've only been here for 3 months, but and I thought Edinburgh would be this great, open, inclusive space. And it is. It is very welcoming, and I'm enjoying my time very much here. However, there are, as always, some little things that happen, and not maliciously, obviously, but just, things. So the first thing, because this is a diversity research fellowship, the assumption is, you were hired because you are a woman, or specifically a woman of color. You are hired to bring some diversity to the school. That is not the case. I hope, I think, because the research fellowship, yes, they call it a diversity fellowship, but it's open for everyone, and everyone can apply. There is this misconception, I know, that only women can apply, or only people of color, or whatever minority you think of when you think of diversity, but it is open for everyone, and they consider everyone, and they really only choose on research proposal that you submit. So yes, it is very tempting to classify me as being hired because I am a woman, but I am not. And the proof that I have for this is that the other Patience Cowie research fellow is a guy. So, proof. I'm telling you this maybe because you didn't think this. Again, you're attending a diversity talk, so I assume to an extent you have questioned your own biases already. But this is something that I've encountered while being here, that they are like, oh, cool. And then I tell that the other fellow is a guy, and they're like, oh, I thought they only hired women. I thought you were hired because you're a woman. No. So that is something that, you sometimes run into. Is this a major issue? I mean, nothing is a major issue in the grand scheme of things, right? But it is slightly annoying when this assumption is being made. The other thing I wanted to tell you, basically this is my own free therapy session where I just vent about things, but I think it's a cool story because I had been at the university for about 2 or 3 weeks at this point, and I didn't know people yet. You know how it is when you move to a new job, a new city, a new country, you don't know people, you try to fit in. And so I was having lunch, and I wasn't really part of the lunch group, but I was sitting in the lunch group, so I was kind of part of it, but I didn't feel like I could contribute much to the conversation. And this group of lunch people that I happened to be with were 4 slightly older guys. I think they were all permanent, and I hadn't really met them yet, but I was there, and I was just enjoying not being on my own, really. And at some point the conversation went into the black women at NASA that were the computers for when the space missions were launched during the space race in the 60s. And so I got excited because I was like, oh, I actually know something about that, or at least I've heard of the concept. So maybe this is my way into this conversation here, and I can actually meet some people. And so they were talking about these women, and the fact that there had been this movie that had been made about these women at NASA being the computers. Yes, what was it called again? And they didn't know the name of the movie, which is fine, of course, but I did know the name. So I got very excited. I was like, I can contribute to this conversation. This is great. So I said, oh, that movie is called Hidden Figures. As you can see here, it's a great movie. Really nice. If you haven't seen it, absolutely check it out. It's really cool. It's right up your alley in terms of space science, planetary science, diversity, and it's just, even if you don't like any of that, it's a really cool movie. It's a really good one. So I knew the name of the movie, and I said, oh, it's called Hidden Figures, which wasn't picked up. But maybe, I wasn't speaking loudly enough, or I don't know. So the conversation kind of meandered, and at some point they were like, oh yeah, that movie, what is it called? Damn, we can't think of it. So I piped up once again and said, I think it's called Hidden Figures, a bit louder now, because I was like, maybe, I don't know what's happening. Not picked up at all. And, we fast forward another minute or so, they're still debating what the name of the movie could be. And at this point, I'm like, am I just invisible? What the hell? So I once again said Hidden Figures. I think the movie is called Hidden Figures. Nothing. But 10 seconds later, the guy next to me had an epiphany and said, oh, guys, I know. I think it's called Hidden Figures. And then everyone was like, ah, yes, you're right. And I was just sitting there, and it felt so ironic. And I'd never had such a blatant example of being a hidden figure, and then saying something, being ignored, and then the guy saying it, and everybody listening. And I know this is a very common example, in EDI stories, but I'd never experienced it myself so blatantly. So that was an interesting lunch, and again, I don't think they meant anything with it. I I'm pretty sure they'd be mortified if I told them this story. I know them a bit better now. So it's all good. It's never with ill intent that these things are being done, but they kind of just happen. And it's annoying if you're, at the wrong end of the stick. So this is, I guess, kind of why, and there will be more examples throughout this. It is important to be aware of these things, that they happen and that they're not nice to experience. And that's kind of what I want to bring across today. So in terms of what I study as a diversity research fellow, I study the planet Venus. Particularly, I'm interested in the geodynamics and seismology of Venus. Basically, I just want to figure out if there are earthquakes on Venus, because that would be freaking cool. So that is what I do. And I won't talk about Venus now, because there are other moments for that. But I want to point out that something that is also really cool about Venus is that, of course, it's named after the goddess of love, and therefore it is often associated with women, whereas Mars, named after Mars, the god of war, is mostly associated with men, for example. So there are rules of how to name features on Venus, as there are rules for all kinds of features across the solar system. And for Venus specifically, it means that all the features should be named after goddesses, mythological heroines, famous women, anything female women-like. That is what should name the features on Venus. Now, the interesting thing is that, it's cool that this is happening, but most of the features on Venus are named after fictional women and not actual women. So that's a bit of a pity. If we go to something neutral that is not necessarily associated with men or women specifically, we would look at the moon. The moon does not have a gender kind of rule for naming its features. They have a different rule, namely all of the craters, for example, should be named after scientists, engineers, and explorers, people who really have made a difference in the world, which again is really cool and makes a lot of sense. However, when you start to look at the statistics, of the 1,578 lunar craters named after people, only 32 are named after women, which just seems slightly unbalanced. And there's actually a nice book from 2019 where you can read nice biographies and stories of all these 32 women. But yeah, in history, historically, I know women obviously haven't always been recognized for their contributions, but 32 out of 1,578 is like not a great statistic. So just wanted to point that out for all you space enthusiasts. Now you have that fact up your sleeve. We can have a look at some more like community-based data as well, just to see what it's like for us mere mortals who are still trying to become these great scientists, engineers, and explorers. And for that, I have a little project that I have been doing with some colleagues of mine. As I said, I'm mostly doing geodynamics and seismology, so what we wanted to do was kind of map how the geodynamics community evolved over time in terms of diversity. We didn't want to outright say that it isn't diverse, because we thought then people will get upset. So let's just go with, mapping it through time and seeing that it has improved probably, but that there is still a lot to do. So for that, we looked at workshop participants from a really small geodynamic modeling workshop that is every 2 years. It's called the Ada Lovelace workshop, and it started in 1987, and it has been going roughly every 2 years, with the exception of like COVID, for example, right up until last year. We had the most recent one. And we wanted to map how diverse the community was. So we went through all the participant lists of these conferences, which I can tell you is a nightmare. It's a lot of work, would not recommend. But in the end, we managed. And we Googled everyone and got all kinds of interesting knowledge from them to kind of get an idea of their diversity. So one of the things we did was the geographic diversity, because it's a conference that is being held in Europe all the time. It does switch countries, but it's all very northwestern, mainly Europe. And so the first thing we wanted to do, that is quite easy from abstract books and stuff, is what is the number of countries that is represented here in dark blue, and the number of different institutes or affiliations from people that go to this conference. And as you can see, both the number of countries and the number of affiliations really increase with time. So that's good. It becomes, more diverse, people from the US, Australia sometimes, very rarely, but sometimes yes, some people from Africa, maybe some people from Asia now and again, do find their way to this conference, which makes it a much more diverse place. We get to learn much more different and exciting science. So there is this great trend in time. Good. We can also look at the gender diversity. And we split it into men and women, even though there are obviously more genders, but we didn't want to make those assumptions of the people we were Googling, basically. Also, we didn't find anyone specifically that we knew of that would have any other gender identity. So here we're just plotting women as like an overarching kind of thing. And as you can see, the percentage of women in the participants has an upward trajectory. This is great. But I always thought that actually in geodynamics there were quite a lot of women. In hindsight, I was probably a bit biased because I just have a lot of female friends apparently. So it seems like there's a lot of women because I hang out with them. But that's not actually the case. We're not close to 50-50 like you would expect from demographics across the world. We're kind of stagnating in the last 10 years maybe, around like a third of participants are women. But looking from where we came from, that is there is progress, so that's very good. And we did a little extrapolation to see when we would have gender parity in the participants, and we found that would be 2040 if we continue like this. So, something we could hope for. And I'm kind of showing you this because this is something that, we just started doing, this kind of project, looking at this kind of data. Because if you don't have the data, it's very difficult to make an argument about the fact that there is a problem or that initiatives should be made in order to improve diversity. If you don't have the data that, something isn't really equal, it's very difficult to make that argument. So this is why we are doing this, and hopefully at some point we'll be able to submit it and, get the word out to the entire community. But for now, you got this sneak peek. And we were actually inspired to do this study by some of my friends in seismology who looked at gender gaps in seismology authorship, which is a really interesting paper. I highly recommend you check that out. And they made the prediction that equal probabilities of female and male authorship. So if you get a paper, what is the probability that the first author would be a man or a woman? If it's equal, so 50-50, whether it would be a man or a woman, would be reached towards the end of the century. The end of the century. It's 2025. This is a crazy statistic to me. So yeah, and these kinds of studies kind of show what's going on and what the current state of diversity, equality is in science, geophysics, planetary science, and I kind of wanted to show you that. Time for another story. Because, you know, these papers, they need to be written, and we all know what a joy that is, writing papers. Writing papers, okay, writing is difficult, yes, it's not always enjoyable. The worst part, for me at least, is the reviews. Yeah, reviews can be terrible, and I just want to share some of the reviews that I got a couple of years ago now. First, there was this paper, and it was called A Disrespect to the Community. And the reviewer did have some questions. And they were very important because they added 7 question marks to it. Now, I am quite good with rejections of papers, I'd say, right? If there are things that should be changed to the paper, sure, I can understand that. I'll do that. But I think there is a way in which you can communicate this that doesn't leave the author crying. And if you talk about a disrespect to the community and you have this very passive-aggressive review with all these question marks, that's not great. Now, we got back this review, and obviously it was very bad. The paper was, it wasn't rejected. It was major revisions, I think, but we decided to pull it. And go to a different journal in the end, because I had 2 co-authors on this, 2 guys, and they were both appalled at this review. They had never had such a bad review before. In their whole career, they, you know, this was one of maybe 2, and definitely classed as one of the worst they'd ever received. So they were really supportive. They wrote an appeal on my behalf, which was very nice to the journal. Didn't go anywhere, but you know. And yeah, I felt crushed, but at least I felt supported. And that is worth something, right? So be like those supervisors and support people when they cry because they're a disrespect to the community. Now, let me tell you about another paper review I got 6 months later. Entirely different paper. And I got some very, very cool comments there as well. I just could not believe my eyes, which is already like, okay, someone didn't enjoy my paper, but sure. They should have scientific honesty, basically implying that I was hiding things or I didn't have the scientific integrity, which we all know is integral to being a scientist. Like, that's very important. You can't just, you know, make stuff up. And so I felt attacked in my way of doing science. And, well, the annoying thing was they were like, oh, they should have the scientific honesty to say this. And then they quoted some lines where I had omitted that. If they had read the next sentence, it would have been in there. So it didn't make any sense that they would write this, but I felt, you know, annoyed that they'd written it down. Worthless was also mentioned in the review, so you know, there's no way to make that sound better. Ridiculously, I love that too. Yeah, okay, sure. Puerile. Now, this was a word I didn't know, because why would I? And just in case you also have never heard of this word, because why would you? Apparently, I asked some friends, and it means childish, but in like, they described it as in a Shakespearean way. Like, that is so puerile, childish thing. So, yeah, that is my paper. Interesting. But the most beautiful comment of all in this one review, again, this is one review, and one that I now find hilarious, but really brought me to tears, and I thought was quite sexist at the time, and still, it was called Witchcraft. And I now wear that as a badge of pride, because how many people can say their paper has been called Witchcraft, huh? I can, oh yeah. And this just felt devastating. You know, I was an early postdoc. I'm still an early career scientist, but that was, in the beginning of my postdoc phase. So I really didn't have that much confidence in my own doings yet. And then you get this, and it's soul crushing. And these co-authors for this second paper were all women. And there were a few early career scientist women on there. And they all agreed with me, this is ridiculous. What is happening? This is, what? Why did someone send this as a review? You should appeal. This makes no sense. Interestingly, though, there were also 2 senior women on the paper, and they did not see the problem that much. They said, well, it's a bit informally written, and that's it. And so they wouldn't support an appeal. And so what I ended up doing, because I was outraged, and I also showed this to my male co-authors from the Disrespect paper, just to verify whether or not I was going crazy. And I don't know, being the hysterical woman and taking offense at things that shouldn't be taken offense at. And they agreed that that was the most horrible review they'd ever seen, and they had never gotten anything like that. And so I had a little bit of an existential crisis, thinking, here we have senior men who have never seen anything like this and are appalled. And here we have senior women who see this and think, it's not that bad. What does that say about the reviews they've each had throughout their careers? Is this a trend? And I know these are, this is not statistically significant at all. These are just 2, anecdotes, 2 outliers perhaps even. But it really got me thinking. I just got into this state of mind thinking, I don't know if I can be in science if this is what I should expect going forward, these kinds of reviews, right? So it felt a bit bad. In the end, I did do the appeal for the witchcraft paper. I did it on my own. And the journal agreed with me that it shouldn't have been sent out, and the review was, too much of a personal attack and not professional, clearly. So that was nice. In the end, so I got to go through the review process at that journal again. We got 1 accept and 1 reject. So they rejected it. This paper has been the bane of my existence. The good news, though, is that both papers eventually are now published. And this is a major step up from what I presented at EPSC when the witchcraft paper was not published. But I can now tell you all that the witchcraft paper has been published. So this is great news. So this is just to say, at the end of the tunnel, there is light. There can be light. Maybe if you don't even have support, it is possible. Yeah. So yeah. But if you get these things, in my opinion, seek support from people who agree with you that these kinds of things are outrageous, and know that you're not alone. And yeah, absolutely do appeal, because I personally think this should not be part of science. This is not how you interact professionally with colleagues. Also, it's very easy to write these things if you're anonymous, right? Both reviewers in this case were anonymous. I still don't know who they are. So this was a little personal story again to kind of bring it back to some data. This was a paper I found specifically about astronomy and planetary science. The title of the paper is already great, but I want to just highlight some of the things that they wrote in their abstract. Namely, women of color experience the highest rates of negative workplace experiences, including harassment and assault, which is just a very sad thing. We're going in the sad bit now, but I promise it will be nice at the end. Yeah. The other statistic I wanted to tell you, 40% of women of color reported feeling unsafe in the workplace as a result of their gender or sex, and 28% of women of color reported feeling unsafe as a result of their race. Again, appalling statistics. Nobody should feel unsafe in their workplace. 18% of women of color and 12% of white women skipped professional events because they did not feel safe attending, identifying a significant loss of career opportunities due to a hostile climate. This is just heartbreaking. And yeah, I don't know what to say to this except that I completely understand. I think a lot of women know stories like that or have experienced it, in the sense that they would forego something that, some exciting work thing, just because they don't feel safe. And that obviously does not result in the best or the most science, which I think unanimously people kind of want to work towards, right? So, what can we do and how do we get into the fun stuff and the light at the end of the tunnel? Well, let me tell you, another one of the projects I started was Science Sisters, which is a YouTube video series and hybrid seminar series that is basically me interviewing lots of diverse people one-on-one to get their advice, because I need advice to thrive in this academic career, yeah? And you can go on YouTube and look at the episodes that we've had so far. We've had 2 seasons, and I just wanted to mention that the 3rd season is coming out in autumn. And then we have 7 episodes with 7 different guests to talk about all kinds of things and have this open and honest conversation, which I hope will help people, because it's really helping me. If you talk to people and you learn from their experiences and how they've dealt with things, it can give you insight in, the fact that you're not alone, or it can help you with how to combat problems, issues that you've encountered yourself. So that is one of my little projects that I do. I do Science Sisters, and I hope that you will join me in full for this hybrid thing where we usually have a watch party, and then we have the guests attending online. Everyone's online on this Zoom thing, and then we have a discussion after watching the episode together. The other thing you can do, and I'm very glad Callum mentioned this at the beginning of the seminar, apparently there are medals you can be nominated for. And so I would highly encourage you to nominate people, because most of the time, the way these medals and awards work is because there is this kind of trend of, these people have always won, so they know how it works and how to nominate people, and so they nominate the people that they know. And then you have the kind of same kind of people that always win. And that does not reflect who is the best, which is very subjective anyway. The truth is, you need to be in it to win it. So you need to be nominated to win. But not all people get nominated. Why not? I don't know. Sometimes people aren't aware of these things or how they can make an impact on a career, but they can. So this is something that I noticed. I don't know what it's like at the Europlanet medals, but I was kind of diving into the EGU Geodynamics Division Outstanding Early Career Scientist Award. Basically because a few years ago, my postdoc supervisor won the award, and I was very pleased for him. And I got curious as to who else had won this award. So that's all information that's available online. So I looked it up. And these are the lovely, smart people that have won the Geodynamics Division Outstanding Early Career Scientist Award from EGU, which is the European Geosciences Union. And yeah, I mean, I know a lot of these people. They're definitely outstanding. I will not argue with that. But it is a bit samey statistically. I don't know if you can see the trend. It's quite difficult. I'll give you a clue. They're all men. And this is not very aspirational as a young woman who also wants to, break through in science and do outstanding things. Maybe it's misguided, but I do have quite some ambition. I'd like to be outstanding. Who doesn't want to be outstanding or recognized for the work that they do? There's not that much recognition or appreciation in academia, so I think we are allowed to aspire to some appreciation and recognition. And if you see this, then the logical conclusion to draw is that maybe this kind of recognition is only for certain types of people, and I am not part of that. I could never achieve that. Now, this is only part of the story because sometimes people get nominated for the Geodynamics Division Award, but they're so good that they actually win a bigger award, which is the union-wide, the whole EGU-wide award across all the different disciplines. And if you look at the people who won that, on behalf of the Geodynamics Division, let's say, which again is my bias, so apologies for that. I didn't look at any other divisions in depth. But if you add those people, you get these people. Now, there is one saving grace, which is Grace. She won in 2016. But otherwise, statistically, it's still not very inspiring. And again, if you look at just the Outstanding Early Career Scientist Award for Geodynamics, the only list you see is men. So that is frustrating for me. Again, maybe I'm this hysterical woman that takes offense at these weird things, but I just get frustrated and I want to see change. So I have no faith in people, so I just do it myself, because what else can you do? So what I did when I realized this, I thought, this is weird. Someone needs to change this somehow. Obviously, I can't personally do that. But what I did was I gave a speech at EGU to the geodynamics community, showing them these statistics and saying, this is not very aspirational for women. And also other minorities. There's very little diversity here. So there's a big part of the community that maybe, doesn't feel engaged or doesn't feel like they could ever aspire to be this. And I think that is a problem, because there are a lot of outstanding women and people from other minorities that absolutely deserve this award because they're absolutely outstanding. So why are they not being nominated? Why are they not winning this thing? And so I tried to make this impassioned speech. Again, I have no faith in people, so I didn't trust that anyone would actually nominate any women or other people from minorities, people from other minorities. So what I did was I started nominating people. It's a little bit of a life hack. You don't have to nominate just one person. You can nominate multiple people. You don't have to put all your eggs in one basket. I never really understood this. Some people that I talked to, especially professors, were quite adamant about the fact that they would only support one nomination. But I personally think that multiple people can be amazing, can be outstanding. We're not in the committee giving the award. So nominating them just means saying, we think this person is doing great science. Consider them, yeah? And you can say that of multiple people. So what I did was I nominated multiple people, and obviously it does take a bit of work. You need to get the support from senior people, because who would believe me, right? So I needed to reach out to professors and stuff that would also sign these letters that we wrote to say, these people are pretty amazing. Please consider them for this award. And I can tell you now from firsthand experience that, oh my goodness, change can be made, because in 2023, the first year I started nominating people, Aggie Kirali, one of my nominees, won the award because she is absolutely bloody outstanding. She does great work on anisotropy and geodynamic models and in the Earth. And in 2024, the next year, Anne Glerum won the award, which again is one of my nominees. She's one of my very good friends, and she does amazing work on geodynamic models, model development, and linking it to ores and all these kinds of things we need for the green energy transition. So they were absolutely outstanding, and they won because we nominated them, and suddenly we have these role models to aspire to and to see actually things can change. Yes, and it is possible. So, just to kind of conclude, from this whole kind of rambly talk, what can you do? In broad strokes. And these are just some suggestions. So the first thing is to educate yourself. Go to one of these talks, which you're already doing. Great. Maybe check out some of the papers that were in this talk, or there's lots of books available as well. Maybe talk to some people. Talk to each other about your experiences, all these kinds of things, and become aware of the problem. If and where possible, try to point out the contributions of women, of people of minorities, because, for example, when I was student and you sit in this maths class, you get all these famous portraits of these men that do things like Lagrange, Gauss, I mean the list is endless, and that's really cool. I absolutely love the history of science, but there were also women and you know, it's very easy because it's a little bit more difficult to find out information about them. They were, you know, hidden figures. So it's not as easy to know what their contributions were perhaps, or, you know, how they fitted into the history, but they definitely were there. So if you can, in your lectures or in your seminars, point out contributions of women. For example, in this talk, I told you about quite a few women and their research. I also showed you a lot of men. They have mostly remained nameless. But, you know, I tried to point out specifically the research highlights of the women. And that is something that doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't cost you time in your lecture or something. And it can be a subtle way to let people know that all kinds of people contribute to science. Obviously, be aware of microaggressions and unconscious bias. Sometimes you have these situations, as I described at the beginning of the talk, and be aware of them. Having said that, I also don't know really how to deal with them always, or how to step in and avoid the other person being at the back end of that. So it's very difficult, but as long as you're aware of it and you try to do your best, basically, and have this open conversation at work and with colleagues, I think things slowly can improve and you can, slightly change the work culture over time. Obviously, as I mentioned, nominate people for awards and prizes. Nominate everyone, right? I think it's a weird thing that you need to be nominated and otherwise you can't be in the pool of winners, but it's nice if you have a chance to win it, I think. So nominate everyone you think is outstanding, and especially don't forget the people from minorities, yeah? And then, as a last bit of self-promo, join the new season of Science Sisters in fall 2025. If you subscribe to the YouTube channel, or, I'm sure there will be some announcements on different mailing lists at that time. There will be videos talking all about careers, problems people have encountered, but also just how to navigate a career in science and do it in the most fun way possible. So we'll have videos, we'll have discussions, and hopefully we'll all get together. So that's it. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to your questions and whatever you are writing in the chat.
Thank you, Iris. That was fantastic. I think that in the climate we find ourselves in at the moment in 2025, this is a conversation that is super crucial, and it's great that we're having it. And I think we need to continue to promote this discussion around the community. Okay, we have some time now for some Q&A. So I would invite all of you to post your questions in the Q&A tab at the bottom panel of your screen. We have had a very active chat during this webinar, which has been fantastic. I've really enjoyed reading those. So I won't go through all of that in one go, but if there are elements of that chat which could do with being properly broadcast from the panelist side, then pop some highlights of them in the Q&A and we'll address those.
If there's
Something that I thought was
immediate questions from the audience, then would like to make a comment that I'm really surprised how editors of a journal let pass these kind of reviews. I mean, if it is clearly, a personal attack, then I think editors be more have a filter function in a way. I mean, I know that being an editor, you get 100, I don't know how many papers. It's a lot of work. I understand that too. I don't know. It's just a thought that, like, how is that even possible to pass?
There was a thought in the, there was a thought in the chat about actually this perhaps being a product of an anonymous review process, which has a lot of benefits, and in general in academia that kind of anonymity actually can be great for preserving diversity and things like this. But actually in cases like this, it also sort of allows you to say things that might actually be that you would very likely never say if you had to put your name to them, right?
Like,
so it raises quite. Yeah. Sorry, Martin.
It's like social media. You can be anybody.
Yeah.
You just have some name or identity. You can do anything you want, right?
Yeah, you're right. It's a very similar process, isn't it?
It was interesting because the disrespect to the community review, as I said, we pulled it from the journal because we submitted it to a different journal and we were exceptionally unlucky that we got the same reviewer. But in this journal, the reviews are public. So they're always public and they're immediately put on the website, and then everyone can see them, including the authors, obviously. And so the review was pretty much the same. That's how we knew it was the same reviewer, except that these passive-aggressive things, disrespect to the community, the 7 exclamation marks or question marks, exclamation marks, whatever, those kind of things were removed. So it was like, okay, so that this is not done, yeah, if everyone can read it. And so that felt, so they were aware of it, right? So that means it's intentional. So that's just, I don't know why you would do that. Yeah. Yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention in terms of the editor, because I gave this talk, or a version of this talk, a few months ago in October at FU in the Free University in Berlin, and they had it was for maths people, so a slightly different audience. And at the end, a professor came up to me to say that he didn't think we should censor reviews. So that was the takeaway he had. And I was like, I don't think I was advocating for that. I was just saying remove personal tags. But yeah, he took it very differently. So it was very interesting to see that perspective. Almost thinking like, advocating for, So, yeah, interesting.
Absolutely. We have a couple of questions in the Q&A. Perhaps they are two parts of the same question. So an anonymous attendee asks, great presentation. I have a question about the data for geodynamics workshop attendance taken as a rough proxy for community trends. In-person attendance itself can be influenced by various factors, including differences in service load and aspects of childcare responsibilities, disability, etc. Do you think those factors are significant to the overall trend?
Yes, definitely. We've been trying to figure out how to maybe cross-analyze that or something. so one of the things we're obviously still kind of grappling with the data, and we've also realized that there's this global data protection thing that we now need to adhere to, which is another can of worms we're trying to deal with at the moment, because these are personal information that we're kind of gathering. But yeah, that's absolutely a very important factor. So what we want to show, and we're pretty sure the data does show, is that if the attendance of people from the country where the conference is held will be higher, of course, because it's easier to get to. And we also wanted to try and make a correlation, but we haven't figured out how yet, how to quantify how easy it is to go to the conference in terms of travel, because sometimes it's in very remote places, but also in terms of costs. But then we kind of stumbled at the hurdle of how do you quantify easiness of going to the conference. It's also very difficult to figure out what the costs were of each of the conferences, because that's not something that anyone really put online. And then you have how inflation changed and the euro, and it was another can of worms that we haven't touched yet, but we are definitely interested in looking at that a bit, because that indeed makes a very big difference. I think as soon as you have childcare facilities, as they have now, for example, at EGU, which is still quite limited, I think I've heard, but at least it's better than nothing, then it just becomes so much easier already for parents to consider going even, right? So I think that's a big thing to take into account.
EPSC has childcare as well.
Oh yeah, that's true. There was at EPSC. That was very nice as well.
So this is an action from the Europlanet Diversity Committee. Actually, it has been for the last few EPSCs.
Yeah, I heard about that. It's good.
I have a question just based on something that we touched on towards the end of the presentation. We talked about challenging unconscious bias, and we spoke about workplace culture. And for me, when I think about challenging biases, they exist, in one person, and work culture feels like an enormous space for one person to influence. And I think that can be daunting. What do you think is the impact that one person can have in a workplace culture, having done that work in themselves?
That's a very good question. I think I absolutely agree it's daunting, and my very limited contributions to the places where I've been very much depend on the people in the room. Like, for example, if there's more senior people that I don't know well, I will not feel comfortable enough to, I don't know, maybe say something, right? And I think that is okay, because you should only do what you feel safe to do. But at the same time, as you maybe work somewhere for longer, or you get to know the people better, at some point there might be a point where you do feel comfortable challenging this. And it doesn't have to be in like a preachy way of like, oh, excuse me, you're doing this, very oftentimes I would, if it's kind of like a friend and they kind of make an offhand joke or something, I'm like, excuse me, you can do it in like a fun way. And I guess that's how I've done it so far, but I'm not necessarily great at it. I think the other thing that I tend to do in order to make a difference is, I surreptitiously always try to include it even in some of my research talks, so that it maybe unconsciously becomes part of the conversation, and it becomes normal to talk about it or to acknowledge that these things exist. And that kind of over time, like it will take a lot of time, might change some things.
Thank you. So we are almost at the hour now, so we are at the end of our session. Just like to...
One more question here.
Is this from Nimisha?
No.
In the Q&A. Perfect.
There's a question. Do you think hybrid formats offer benefits for inclusion relative to in-person only for smaller events, as much as for larger events?
Yes. Actually, I think it might work better for smaller events than big events because, I've remotely attended AGU because I didn't want to or I couldn't travel to the US, for example, because it's expensive, and I never found that super helpful to attend these big conferences remotely because you can't talk to people, you're at your laptop very late, so yeah. But if it's a smaller event, I think it is more beneficial because you can make those connections actually, and it is easier to actually become involved in the conversation, and you're not this anonymous person on a laptop somewhere. So I definitely think there is benefits to that. Yeah, and just to reply to a comment in the chat, I agree that it's would be very good to have career trajectories of non-cis males. So Science Sister is trying to do that, and that's why we want to do this hybridly as well. We can have these conversations, and everyone can join however they want, and we can learn from each other.
Thank you. We do have one more question in the Q&A, from Kariana. Thanks for the amazing presentation, Iris. I guess many of us have experienced at least microaggressions, and sometimes we're not aware of them or think it is something that happens only to us. Looking at the data is a change in perspective. I have some questions. I was wondering if women and other minorities are likely more disrespected or not taken seriously during their early career stages, or if this trend doesn't change. And also, I was wondering if the nominations to these awards are anonymous. I guess I've been afraid that nominations would not be taken seriously if they come from a person, ECS minority like me.
That's a good point, but two very great questions. So first, the nominations one. If you do a nomination, there is one person who submits, at least for EGU, I don't know what it's like in other societies, but there's one person who submits the nomination. And I had this fear too, because I'm an early career woman. I was like, no one's going to take me seriously. But you have, you can add a list of people supporting the nomination. And so usually a large part of the nomination process is finding people, senior people, who would support the nomination and work together on the letter and the nomination package. And so, you can just do that and initiate that, and maybe you are the person kind of doing the hard work and the admin work and submitting it, but the fact that these other people are on there supporting it, then that's fine. And historically now it has worked. My nominees have won. The first one, I was the one who officially submitted it. For Anna, I was one of the supporting people, and another friend who's also an early career woman submitted it. So I don't think that makes a difference. The other question was whether there is a change in microaggressions from early career to senior. I don't know so in the Science Sisters interviews that I've done so far, because there's 2 seasons worth on YouTube that you can check out that are still very relevant today. Also the senior people, the senior women highlight that they still have that. And, the advice they give is find an ally that you can rely on within the department, someone, you feel comfortable with and who can stand up for you. I'm not entirely sure if it would change. I guess that's something we'll experience. Ideally, it would just stop happening to everyone, but I guess we're a bit far off from that.
Okay, thank you again, Iris, for coming and speaking to us today. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time out of your morning to come and attend the session. I'd actually just like to end, I hope you don't mind, Namisha, I'm going to just read out your piece in the chat because I really like it, and I think it phrases, I think it encapsulates a nice theme of the session really, really nicely. Namisha says, one of the things, and I would love to see, would be to discuss with literally any non-cis male about their journey or career in planetary science. I'm sure that would be very inspiring to a lot of people. Literally everyone has a story to share. Thanks, everybody. See you soon.
Thank you.